welcoming. I've met so many sweet, nice people, and I'd like to introduce one of them right now. He's got an incredible story that he's going to share with us. John St. John.
I appreciate this opportunity. Can you hear me okay? All right. You'll find that I do love to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate, and something about that has changed our lives. For 36 years after I left the Army and graduate school, I spent destroying my health while I was trying to accumulate wealth. By some kind of accident, in a business relationship, I met Pat Truax and Suzanne, and they introduced my wife and I to a very unusual company called Nikken. They didn't really want to talk about it, but I pulled them out of it. And what they did not, I didn't tell them all about the challenges that I had physically, and I really don't have time to talk about that today, because I want to introduce some friends of mine in the process. But over a period of about 11 months, all of the physical challenges that were taking me down, and I had gotten me where I was going to be a cripple, and actually built our house for a handicapped person. I call it gimpy. That's not a good term. It's called accessible. But within 11 months, all of the challenges that were taking me down were no longer taking me down. What I didn't know was what was going to happen to our son, who was born with cerebral palsy. And for 31 and a half years of his life, he had a very, very difficult life. In fact, for the 14 years prior to us learning about Nikken, we lived a life of what we call a living hell. Prisoners in our own home trying to keep this man alive. What happened during this 11 months that my body was changing was that Matthew's life changed. His physical body decided to take control of itself, and his hands straightened, his legs straightened, his speech cleared, and he developed a memory. His emotional challenges virtually disappeared, and what we found and what we saw was a totally different human being. Today, he's engaged, going to be married next month, and that's it. Excuse me. It's exciting for us because we did not have a hope and a future. So did we develop a why? I have to tell you that we did. And what we found was a reason to go on. A reason to get up in the morning. And for most people in my business, we know we were going to have to retire eventually. But now my reason to get up in the morning is to show people how to solve chronic problems with natural solutions. And quite frankly, I'm just sharing hope every day. Well, that leads us to why I'm here today to share this, because though our story is dramatic and our son's life has been changed forever, and we'll be forever grateful to Nikken for that. And by the way, happy birthday, Nikken, for that one. My stepfather last year broke a hip and fell, very much like happens to many people. And we saw this where people get a little older and they'll break a bone and fall. Well, I went to the hospital, found my stepsister, Alicia Duke, from Fredericksburg, who's there, introduced her to the technologies. Those technologies helped my stepfather get out of the hospital faster than anybody in the history of that system. And at 85, with paper-thin skin, his wound healed in 5 days. That does not happen in medicine. We don't understand why, but it did. So then I said, Alicia, you reckon there's a business here? And she said, well, let's take it back to Fredericksburg. So we did, and going back there, we met a couple by the name of Bobby and Molly Stackville, who had left Houston because Molly has MS. And heat, humidity, and stress exacerbate MS. I don't know what that word means, but I think it means makes it worse. At any rate, that's what they told me. Within a short time, Molly's MS improved dramatically. She could feel the floor. She had some energy. And so this couple and Bobby, who used to play for the World Football League, no longer suffered as much as he did with these injuries that he had done playing like a bull ox trying to butt heads with all these other big guys. So they said, you know, this is a cool deal. Maybe what we ought to do is introduce this to some other folks. So they opened their home and in a presentation invited our special guest today, the Weinheimers. This is Steve, Marissa, and Christina Weinheimer. And what's special about them is that, I asked Christina, Marissa a little while ago, I said, now if I get this wrong, you just jump in there, because I'll let her talk in just a minute. But about 5.5 years ago, Steve was having a midlife crisis, and he had his donor cycle. That's a motorcycle for you those if you don't know. And he got run over on it. And as I understand it, his helmet was knocked off, every bone in his head was crushed, his left side virtually destroyed, and I think they had to remove about 60% of his tongue. And he was pronounced dead on the scene at this accident, and then dead on arrival at the hospital again. Which I'm understanding, I'm not a doctor, but I think that's fairly serious. I think we'll agree on that one. I know Dr. Jackson could probably concur on that one, concur with us on that one. When I met Steve last, I'm thinking it was July. Was that about right, Marissa? I wasn't sure if anybody was home. Steve had a difficulty moving. I could not understand what he said. He had difficulty walking. He could, according to Marissa, he could do very little to help himself. And their life was very challenging, not to mention that they have the lady with the most beautiful smile in Fredericksburg, their daughter Christina here, and she's not a bit shy about that, who has cerebral palsy. And Marissa is the tax assessor collector in Gillespie County. So does she have stress? I would suggest that perhaps she has stress. Well, we talked, and in that first meeting, I asked Marissa, I said, if you could find 5% or 15% change in Steve's life this evening, would you talk some more? And she said, with a little tear in her eyes, she said, if I could have 5%, we'd have a long talk. Well, before the evening was over, she said, we got a lot more, you said. And we talked, and over a period of time, talking with her, talking with Bobby and Molly, they decided to turn their home into a wellness home. Now, they live in a very normal home in a very lovely place called Fredericksburg. What happened over a period of time was dramatic. And I got a call from Marissa within a week or so after they got their technologies, and she told me something about what happened to Steve. Now, Marissa, would you mind sharing that?
Sure. After he started on the wellness home, and he was sleeping on the mattress and everything, he then, do I need to stand up? Okay. Then he went ahead and, well, the first thing we saw was John called, and he said, and Stephen answered the phone, and he goes, who is this? And he said, this is Stephen. He goes, oh. And he couldn't understand what he was saying because he slurred his words very much. And after that, other things have been happening. He can get into the bathtub by himself, which is a big deal for him, without help. He needs a little help getting out. I put him in bed at night, and he sleeps on the left side, and his left side is the one that is pretty much not working. And his leg, for the last 4 years, after he had his Achilles tendon cut, it's because he had a drop foot and he couldn't get it up, so they had to cut the Achilles tendon. He then could not lift his leg back on the bed. And after we started this, about 4 days later, it fell off the bed, and I always tell him, go ahead and pick it up and put it up. And he tried, gets red in his face and can't do it. And that day, he picked up his leg and moved it back on the bed. And I called Christina. I said, Christina, come here. You need to come look. And I threw his leg back off the bed. And she goes, wow. He lifted it up, and she goes, wow. And she threw it off the bed. And I think we did this about 5 times. And he was kind of tired then. But he was excited about this, and I don't know, it's just all kinds of things have happened. And anything else? Oh, well, another thing, not with him, my daughter, she has what it's called ataxia, which is a slight form of cerebral palsy. She has never had real good balance, and she has the bracelets, the insoles and everything, and she's walking so much better with that. And we all do it. And I also, my knees, I had knee surgery, orthoscopic surgery for a torn something or another 2 years ago, and I could not get down in my cabinet, so I always yelled for Christina to help me get back up. Well, now I went on the joint. John told me you need the joint and the liver support, and I tell people all the time, I say, that is the best stuff. I get down on my knees on cement, and I walk on my knees just showing them.